Well, I guess I just step up here, right? I tried to get them to do a little Jimmy Buffett or something before I talk because I'm Debbie Downer today. And I know you all understand, but I'm wearing a black mourning band over my badge today, and all the Franklin officers are, because of the Knox County Sheriff's Deputy, 29 years old, husband, father of a 5-year-old boy, was killed in the line of duty this week. He answered a domestic call and was shot in the head and killed, and he donated his organs. So that's why you see Franklin officers. We take them off today at sunset after his funeral. Now today, this is a very tough topic to talk about, but I think we have to talk about it, and I'm glad that we are. Police officers are not mental health professionals. However, we're at the other end of the 911 call. A recent study conducted by the National Conference of State Legislators stated, a person experiencing a mental health crisis is more likely to encounter law enforcement than to receive treatment or crisis intervention. So what does that look like in Franklin? Our jurisdiction is about 42 square miles, simply the city of Franklin. And psychological emergencies is one of our leading calls for service. Now that stunned me when I came to work here because I'd worked in Nashville all my life just about. And I didn't see that many psychological emergencies. We had a lot of other stuff, but not so much there. And I thought, this is a town that has it all. The best schools, wonderful demographics, wonderful quality of life, and yet people are hurting. In 2022, Franklin police officers responded to 83 suicide threats, 39 suicide attempts, and 9 suicides completed, and 69 overdoses. The oldest person was 84, and the youngest was 11 years old. For the first 9 months of this year, we've had 74 suicide threats, 37 attempts, 4 suicides completed, and 3 more are pending the medical examiner's report, and 43 overdoses. And what I shared with Amy Alexander and what she may have shared with you is that the first 12 hours of yesterday, we had 1 suicide threat, 2 suicide attempts, and thank God sergeants on the midnight shift saved their life. One woman had taken drugs and used alcohol and then got into a hot tub and was going to drown herself, and she was underwater when he got there and pulled her out. The second one was using a scalpel. We had 1 suicide completed yesterday. All of this in a 12-hour period. I've noticed an increase in another type of call that Franklin officers respond to. It's called a welfare check. Check on the welfare at this address, this person, so-and-so. For the first 9 months of this year, Franklin police officers have responded to 5,538 welfare checks. That's about 21 a day. Now, often these calls turn into a mental health or a health situation. Someone's disoriented, maybe they're a sundowner, they're walking down the middle of the road barefoot. I heard that one last week. They were walking down Carruthers, a woman with a backpack and barefoot. Trespassing, maybe they haven't picked up their mail in several days and the neighbors have noticed it. They won't answer their phone, they won't answer a text, they haven't shown up for dialysis for several days. They've missed several appointments, they haven't shown up to work. You get the picture. Sometimes it's a case of a person who lives alone. They don't know their neighbors. Their relatives live out of state, and they can't make contact. So they call the police. It's not unusual for officers to have to breach a door or window to get in, and often they find that the person is in need of medical attention, or unfortunately, they may be DOA. We do continuous training for these calls, not only in first aid and CPR, but each officer carries Narcan, and many times it takes maybe 5 officers with their Narcan to bring somebody around. and they receive intense training on crisis intervention and de-escalation. We know that what we say and do in those first minutes can make all of the difference in the world in someone's life. Knowing how to talk to someone is key to getting them the life-saving help that they desperately need. We try to provide our officers with those skills to identify what a person might be experiencing. They also have to do a risk assessment to determine if they are safe or any bystanders that might be around. Law enforcement officers are resilient. They don't complain, but it's my job to protect the ones who protect us. So we do critical incident debriefings after many of these calls, and we offer a safe place for them to talk so that they can move on to the next. I have a licensed psychologist on staff so officers can receive one-on-one counseling. I also have 34 military veterans, so we check for PTSD. And I have 27 officers who have volunteered and been especially trained to be peer supporters for those late night conversations that they might be engaged in. In my career, I remember that no one would talk about mental health except in hushed tones. I also remember when police officers would not discuss their own health and wellness in fear that someone might think they were weak. Now we say it's okay not to be okay, but you've got to talk about it. So we provide those opportunities. I'm thankful that we can shine a light on this very important topic and collaborate for successful strategies to help one another. I'd like to share an example with you of how all of this might come together. And maybe some of you have heard about this incident. One of our night shift sergeants was late leaving for home. They get off at midnight, they work 10-hour shifts. So he went back to the station to finish some paperwork. He lives in Nashville, and normally he would leave headquarters on Columbia Avenue and go straight across past Church of the City and out 96 to I-65 and hit it straight to Nashville. This night, for some reason, he decided to go a different route. And I don't know why. It's one of those really strange things. But he traveled down Franklin Road, and he got to Brentwood and turned right on Concord Road. Normally, he would go under the interstate bridge. But this morning, which it was almost 1 o'clock by then, he went across the Concord Bridge over the interstate. And when he got there, he saw a woman sitting on the guardrail. He did a U-turn and went back to her in his vehicle. He got out and approached her very carefully and began talking to her. He called for backup from the Brentwood Police Department since that is their jurisdiction. He finally convinced her to come back to a safe position, and she agreed to go to the hospital. She said she'd go if he'd take her. She told the sergeant, "I prayed someone would stop, and you did." The sergeant kept his word. He carried her back to the hospital, and he stayed with her. And it wasn't until afterwards, when he returned to the station to log his body camera and turn in some paperwork after what had just happened, it hit him what really had just happened. He believes, and so do I, that he was guided there for that purpose. It was not a coincidence. And my friend, Father Ed Steiner at St. Philip Catholic Church, once told me, a coincidence is a miracle in which God chooses to remain anonymous. I often remind my officers to remember that when you're in a position to help someone, be glad and always do it, because God's answering someone else's prayers through you. And that goes for each and every one of you and all the professions that you're in. This is why I feel that this is important. I've sort of taken this on as my own advocacy. I never give a presentation that I don't talk about the issue of mental health in our city and in our country. And I hope it's some information that is useful to you as well. I'm very honored that Amy allowed me to be here today to speak to you. I appreciate that you're here today in Franklin and talking about this issue. And never hesitate to call on me if I can assist you in any way. And Amy, I made it in less than 10 minutes.